In this video, I will teach you how to do your 150 solo by giving you exact instructions how to play Wave of Life Monk, because I want you to believe in you and
just do it!
let's jump straight into it. So this is an LOD build, which stands for Legacy of Dreams and refers to this legendary gem, which means you will start with maxing out this legendary gem. And this will be the first one to use, and we will get to the rest of them a little bit later. Gear, as it is an LOD, we can't use any set. We should use legendary or ancient legendary or primal items in each slot, and we can use green items as long as we don't have at least 2 of them being from the same set. I will go top to bottom through each slot, and I will explain what we use and why we use it. It's a flexible build at some extent, but if you want to do 150, and I know you want, we have to maximize each slot and use best in slot item with best in slot stats. It's a little bit hard to gear for, it takes time, but once you get it assembled, boy is it strong. In the headpiece we will have Tsokring's Gaze. We use it because it has Wave of Light damage of it, so you need here a legendary or an ancient, ideally ancient, with crit chance and as close to as possible to 150% Wave of Light damage. Next one, for shoulders, we use Lefebvre's Soliloquy because of a damage reduction. This build is quite squishy, especially if you're low Paragon. For torso, we will use the Cinder Coat that gives us this nice fire damage buff up to 20%, and also, not least important, it gives us resource cost reduction up to 30% on fire skills, and we will use fire skills, and it helps a lot with resource management. For amulet, we will use Squirts, just because it's awesome. This will give us double damage if we don't take damage. During the rift, it's quite hard to keep it up. Don't worry about this, just don't try to focus on this. The big win from this amulet is when we get a shield, which combined with Flavor of Time of a Follower, it's a 2-minute shield, so for 2 minutes we get insane damage, almost double damage, and for this build, Shield Pylon acts as good as arguably Conduit. So you can gather, like if you get a shield, as you might have seen in my previous clears, if you get a shield, you can drag the whole map there of elites, take the shield, and in 2 minutes you most probably will destroy all of them. For the gloves, we will take Stone Gauntlets. This is purely defensive option. This will give us up to 250% armor, which is huge because we are a dexterity based character, so it gives us the same amount of armor, so it scales up very well, and it's very important to have that toughness help during the rift. These Stone Gauntlets come at a price, so they give us a lot of buff, but also with each stack they slow us down, they slow our attack speed, they slow our movement speed, so if we don't nullify its effect, at 5 stacks we basically just become a stone. We become immobile in a map, completely helpless, and we will just get killed by the mobs. Usually what's done in these builds, when we use Stone Gauntlets, we just wear Ice Climbers, and this will give us immunity to freeze and immobilize effect, and immobilize cancels out the Stone Gauntlets. But in this build, because we are going fully DPS, there is a much better option, which is Crudest Boots. And Crudest Boots is used because it gives us Mystic Ally a damage buff up to 200%. And then you would ask, like, why would we need Mystic Ally? We have it, but why would we need this damage? Because it's not Mystic Ally build, it's a Wave of Light build, right? Well, we'll come to this a little bit later. Witching Hour for the belt. This is the most offensive belt in the game. It gives us attack speed and crit damage. And attack speed is a multiplier for a pet, and this is actually a pet build. Why? Just wait for it. Bracers. For bracers we're using Bindings of the Lesser Gods. That again gives us a buff for Mystic Ally. And the second pair we will use Pinto Sprite, which is a direct buff to Wave of Light. And also it slows enemies, which helps a lot with applying, and it slows it always before Wave of Light hits. So it always applies the Bane of a Trapped, for example. You wear the best one you have, and the worst one you just cube. Pants, we are using Blackthorn's Justing Mail. And we use this because we elemental damage, fire damage on it, so another 20% fire damage. We'll use 3 rings in this build, which is Zodiac, Unity, and COE. The best one again, best 2 ones you equip, worst one you cube. Weapons, it's Kyoshiro Blade, which is direct buff for Wave of Light again. Torch of a Grand Temple with a cube, of course. And the key weapon for this build to work is the Rabbit Strike. And that's the moment where we come by to explain why is this a pet build and why do we need Mystic Allies buffs on this as well. Expanders that teleport you to Epiphany, where Epiphany is active, are also mimicked to nearby target with 400 up to 450% damage increase. So it's a huge multiplier. And what does this mean? That all the skills, while we are in Epiphany, say we have Epiphany active, all the skills that spenders that would normally teleport us to the enemy will be mimicked by that. So in this case, we have 2 of them, Cyclone Strike and Wave of Light. So while in Epiphany, wherever we do a Wave of Light, you can see there is a clone, a black clone appearing. That's from the Rabbit Strike. And this clone will be the main damage dealer. Our damage will be irrelevant, especially in 150. All the damage comes from that clone. So we want to buff as much as possible Wave of Light and as much as possible clone. The clone has 2 ways of being buffed. First of all, it's considered a pet. So we can use whatever buffs pets. I'm referring to Enforcer, of course, the legendary gem. And second way of buffing it, it's considered always a Mystic Ally. So that's why, as I mentioned earlier, we are using Crudest Boots up to 200 and Lesser Gods up to 200%. That leads us to the second gem that is a must to use in this build, is Enforcer. We don't care about the secondary, we care about the damage multiplier, which can go up to 60% when it's maxed out. Third gem now in this build, there are 2 options actually. One of them is Stricken and another one is Bane of a Trapped. And which one to use, it's quite dependent of the level of a GR you are doing and also the level of Paragon you have. The more stronger you become, the more closer you are to using Bane of a Trapped. In my journey to 150 up to 148, I used Trapped. For 49 and 50, I used Stricken because my Paragon barely went over 2000 when I cleared 150. How do you decide? Basically, with Trapped, you will clear very much faster. You will get insane time of a boss, 4 minutes plus, 5 minutes, 6 minutes sometimes, depends on what maps do you get and what pylons. Downside of it is that on single target this build is not so strong, so you'll need a lot of time without Stricken on the boss. So my advice here is wherever you try it out and wherever you see that your boss fight is, I would say more than 4 minutes, maybe 5, but closer to 4. If it goes further than that, you need more than that to kill the boss, swap to Stricken. Stricken is much slower in the Rift, you will kill trash a little bit slower, but it will require more fishing. But when you catch the perfect Rift with small, good trash, valuable trash, you will still be ahead quite a lot and you will spawn the boss no problem with time on it. And you will need, with Stricken, I think even in 150, with a single target one, you need like up to 3 minutes, sometimes even less. Especially if you get a pylon in the end, a shield or a power, it's even less. So once you get higher Paragon, like 2500, 3000 plus, you would definitely, in the end game, in the long term, you would definitely use Trapped. Stricken is not only weaker, but also it works a little bit not as intended of this build, and that's because the bells that we summon, which I will cover shortly, have life, and they are considered like hittable target as well. So sometimes on boss fight, if a bell is closer to you, the streaking stack will be applied to the bell instead of a boss. So it doesn't pile up so fast and smooth in the boss fight. Like, you will lose a lot of stacks on the sideways. Now regarding the build, this season, as you know, we have a sanctified power for Monk that changes completely the way we use this build. In the past, of course, if you take the sanctified power off, in the past you will just play it by spamming Wave of Light and you'll deal instant damage of. But now with the sanctified power, what we are looking for is having the sanctified power that says casting Wave of Light now summons a bell at the target location that deals damage when the player attacks the bell. Up to 5 bells can be active at one time. What this says is that, like, you can see, like, this is normal Wave of Light, this is sanctified Wave of Light. So instead of dealing damage, we have a bell, we can summon them, and they will deal damage only when we hit them with another damage dealing power, which in our case we use Cyclone Strike. And this is very good because Cyclone Strike with Implosion like has a big radius, and you can hit all of them in one go. So what you will do, you will summon them and you will hit them with Cyclone Strike. I will cover a little bit later how to exactly play the build, but now let's go through the skills. Skill wise, we take Mystic Ally, Air Ally, and this is purely for, it's not for damage, it's purely for having for resource management. They will be used just for filling up our resource. Whenever we cast it, we gain 100 spirit. Second one is Epiphany, Desert Shroud, of course, for 50% damage reduction. And damage reduction wise speaking, also, we will have shoulders, as I said, activated by Cyclone Strike. And also the unity you should combine with another unity that you put on your follower. And also on the follower you need to put your cannot die relic. So your follower should not be able to die, then this combo works. Next one is Serenity Ascension. This is again damage control. Toughness, it's not even toughness, it's damage mitigation. With the rune Ascension, instead of 3 seconds we get 4 seconds of immunity. And we will have it up quite a lot of the time, so this helps also a lot with keeping the Squared necklace up. And Dashing Strike for mobility, and we take the rune Blinding Speed for that dodge chance, which again is a lot of toughness. You can see, like, when we dodge, our toughness almost doubles. It's always nice to have a dodge. First of all, for survivability. Second of all, dodge chance with Serenity up also, like in combination. It gives a lot of chance and helps a lot of maintaining squares as well. Wave of Light, of course, we will use the Explosive Light because it has a lot of AoE and it's the best rune in slot. Cyclone Strike Implosion, that helps with grouping the mobs, detonating the bells, and also, as I mentioned, it procs the shoulders, which you'll see here a bar for 6 seconds, I believe, 5 seconds. So you want to keep it up all the time. Another damage reduction. All these damage reductions are very important to keep up at the whole rift because 150 is brutal. Sometimes you can be one-shotted easily, especially when you don't have stacks from Stone Gauntlets. And Cube we covered already, like Torch for damage, for Wave of Light damage, Pinto for Wave of Light, or Lesser Gods again damage oriented, and the third ring, whatever is the worst from all three of you. Gameplay is quite simple. What I usually do, I numlock these 3 skills, but I should not care about them during the rift, so I can focus on mobs, island management, map management. If you feel comfortable enough, of course, you can leave Serenity off numlock, and you can trigger it on demand whenever you feel that you are in big danger. In my experience, it's much easier and smoother just to put it on numlock, set and forget, and that's it. In the rift, you will basically dash around, you'll gather mobs, pool of mobs, and what you'll want to do, because you'll have your Epiphany up all the time basically. You will do 3 casts with Epiphany up, 3 casts of Wave of Light, which will generate, because of a clone, will generate 6 bells. And because we can have only 5 at a time, whenever we activate the last 2, first one will despawn. And the beauty of this build, that whenever we destroy or despawn a belt, let me show it with Epiphany up. You can see 2 by 2, always on the third cast, because first one is despawned, it's calculated, it's considered destroyed. We will get a free Oculus ring, and this is just awesome because we don't have to kill for Oculus ring, and this is a huge boost for boss fight when we have single target boss. Because usually with single target you don't get Oculus ring, you can't use it. This build, first time of history of Diablo, I guess, we can use it. We can generate Oculus from thin air. So on the boss fight we will do again like 1, 2, like with Epiphany, 1, 2, 3, and you can see Oculus. So what you do during the Rift, you generate 3, you jump into Oculus, and you detonate them. And you repeat 1, 2, 3, Oculus, jump, detonate. And also don't worry over bells that are far away, because even then, when you detonate, your pet, the mimic, usually will be around the bells, and it can detonate as well, because remember, all the damage comes from the mimic. So again, you do the pull, whenever you are ready, you do like 1, 2, 3, you see the Oculus, you jump into Oculus, you detonate. You do another 3, you detonate. Always try to focus on the Oculus. Don't focus on the mobs. Of course, focus on them for damage mitigation, like avoid some bad affixes and stuff. But your big friend in the whole run will be the Oculus ring. And when you have big pulls, of course, you will not see it a lot of times because it will spawn in the middle. But even then, like, continue doing damage. If you don't see, like, you do 3, and if you don't see the Oculus, don't stress out and don't wait to see it, just detonate. You do another one. Time is important, so you don't want to lose too much time. You jump in the Oculus whenever you see it, and sometimes even in big pools, it will spawn on the edge of a pool, so it will be visible. Then you jump into it and you detonate. Let's talk about Sanctify. We usually will Sanctify an item where we get the best value from. And of course, if you don't have good weapons, the go-to will be Sanctifying a weapon, because Sanctifying a weapon will be getting a primal weapon. I started with Sanctify weapon as well, but with time, in long term, you want to reforge the weapons or also use the upgrade weapon facility from the cube, very side, this one, from yellows, to get good weapons. And once you get the good weapons, you can Sanctify another item. And then you have basically 2 good options. One of them is to do the gloves. A lot of people went for the gloves because stone gauntlets are quite hard to roll, actually. And for this build, the ideal one would be not this one, not with dexterity, but we would want the quad effect. We would want critical damage, crit, cooldown, and area damage. If you get more or less decent gloves, as here, as I got 3 out of 4, and with good range, like close to max, then the other best in slot option will be, of course, the squirts. And the squirts is hell of a mission to sanctify it correctly, because you will chase for fire crit and with the correct power. And this is not as easy as it seems. Like, I sanctified 300 plus amulets, and I got only 4 of them with fire crit, and all 4 of them had the wrong sanctified power. All 4 of them, by the way, had the 7 strike power. So I had to settle for this dexterity one, which is second best option, but is not as bad as it might seem. Dexterity crit is still a good one, because we have 60% already from these 3 items, and those 20% are less valuable in this case, less added value. Like between 60 and 80 is not such a big difference. So at low Paragon, even I would argue that 1000 dex is quite close on par with 20% fire. Still 20% fire would be the best option in my opinion, but 1000 dexterity is not far away. And if you by chance have perfect gloves, perfect amulet already, then it's up to you what you can sanctify. You can go for a convention of elements, because then you get the max bonus already, and you can sanctify it until you get cooldown crit. That's a very good option as well. And if you get that one perfect as well and need to sanctify other thing, just sanctify whatever you want, as long as you have a right power on it. Coming back to the boots, because we don't use ice climbers and we use stone gauntlets, we need to nullify the negative effect of this, basically not to become a stone. And to nullify this effect, we use Epiphany. Whenever we are in Epiphany, we are immune to crowd control effects. And wherever this is up, your stone gauntlets will be nullified. So we will not receive any negative impact. The problem is that this is a long cooldown skill. It has 60 seconds cooldown. So we will need priority 1 to use a lot of cooldown on our gear. And this is priority 1. It comes even before crit chance or crit damage on the rings or on the gloves. So what we can do, of course, we can stack it in headpiece. And by using a diamond, this is quite standard and everyone can do it. Then we will want it on our shoulders. 8% always we want to maximize. If you get 7, it's still fine, but the more the better. So we use 8 here, I mean like on shoulders, then we want it on gloves, and we want it on both rings. Also you get it on the weapons, because here we can get another 20%. What some people do, they drop on one of the weapons cooldown and they're still fine. I tried it, it's doable, but it's not as smooth of an experience. Like a lot of times when you move from pool to pool, you will still drop your Epiphany, and if you get hit in that window, you will be slowed down and become a rock, which can lead to big issues, including survivability. So you can try it out. If it suits you, it's fine. If not, put it on both weapons. I tried it, I didn't like it, I put it on both weapons. So basically I sacrifice some area damage just to have Epiphany smoothly almost all the time up. And the last one, you will get 10% from your enchantments. Mine is undressed now because I'm playing another class, so all the items are there. But when the enchantments is properly dressed with intelligence items and it has 25k intelligence, you will get 10% of cooldown from her. Even then, that is not enough to keep our Epiphany up 100%. It will still have a small downtime, and to cancel that downtime, that's why we are using Ring of Zodiac. And Ring of Zodiac means that whenever we hit with a resource spending attack, it will decrease cooldown of one of our skills. It's not guaranteed that it will be Epiphany, but by spamming it fast, it will decrease our ally that will help us with resource management. It will decrease our dashing strike, and of course it will decrease our Epiphany. So if you spam it enough, you will keep your Epiphany up 100% of the time. Because of a sanctified power, can't apply Zodiac as fast as it was possible in the past, because now Wave of Light doesn't do direct damage, so it doesn't count towards Zodiac. This one will apply Zodiac. The bells do not apply Zodiac, so our only skill to do it is Cyclone Strike. It's always Cyclone Striking. We hit enemies, we hit the bells with Cyclone Strike, and our Epiphany just rolls off. And another important remark here is that sometimes when you have like a slight downtime, be it 1 second, and you get hit, and you get this like up to 5 stacks of stone gauntlets, and straight after that you apply Epiphany, it will still keep you in a rock state for around 5 seconds. So you'll still be a rock even if you will have Epiphany and Serenity up, if you got in the rock state before getting into Epiphany. It doesn't cancel it straight away out. This is very frustrating. I think this is a bug, but we have what we have. If you watch my clears, you can see. And stat wise, as I stated, after cooldown, the next one you want to prioritize crit chance, crit damage on items. And third one, you want area damage. Like area damage is like a bonus, but it's a heavy area damage build. It has heavy AoE and it applies area damage. So having a lot of area damage actually helps a lot, especially when you have like streaking on. It helps even more. Like you can feel the value even more, because with trapped you destroy already 150. So where you can get area damage, of course, is like it's shoulders, gloves, rings, and weapons. The most probable slots you want is shoulders and gloves. And also, as I stated before, you can apply it on one on your weapons instead of cooldown, or if you're lucky enough to roll them already with cooldown or with area damage, of course you can roll like dexterity off. So ideally it would be like to have cooldown, crit chance, area damage here as well, like area damage cooldown and 10% damage or something. So to maximize this out, you want ancient or primal in every slot before you go to 150. It's doable with 1 or 2 items off, like being just legendary, but it's much harder, especially at low paragon. So try to get everything ancient or primal, and of course 1 item will be sanctified for free. Another important trick what I learned during my pushing is because Cyclone Strike will teleport us every time we are pointing on an enemy, and sometimes you don't want to lose your position. It's very important to keep your position in Oculus. Whenever you have an Oculus, especially during boss fight, is also important. You jump into Oculus and try not to keep your cursor on the mobs, because if you keep it on the mobs and you'll do your Cyclone Strike, it will teleport you away on that mob all the time, and it's very frustrating. So what you want to do is like you do your Oculus. Here we go. Then say these are the mobs. Mobs are here. You put your mouse away, because this is an AoE skill. It doesn't need a target to point on a target. Like it doesn't need target pointing, right? So you do it. So whenever you jump into your Oculus, try always to put your cursor on nothing, so that nothing is pointed by a cursor. Like you put it away. And on boss fight as well, like say this portal is the boss, you put the bells on him, you go to Oculus. Here we are lucky it's on us. Take your mouse from in between you and boss, like take it down here and do the bells. And again you repeat, you jump into your Oculus, you put your mouse away, and you repeat. And if you are up above a boss, the boss is here again, you do it again. You do the bells, you get the Oculus, you are in the Oculus, you put it up, so it's not in between you. And then you just hold right click until you detonate the bells. Why is this? Because bosses usually have quite a big frame, clickable frame. So even if you keep it, like say this is the boss, and even if you keep your cursor in between you, because here for example, right, because the boss has quite a big clickable frame, often enough you will hover over the boss and you'll get teleported straight away here. So you'll stay in your Oculus, this is Oculus, this is the boss, you try to detonate your belts, and when you start detonating, it will teleport you right here, and you'll detonate here, and you lose your Oculus. And sometimes that can cost you the Rift. This is one of the practical tips that I can give you while pushing. And now you're ready. Now you know exactly how to gear, what to use, and how to play the build. If you're still here, I think the best video to follow now is this one, my 150 clear. There you can see in practice all the advice I gave to you. It should help you a lot in visualizing all the things I said to you. Thank you very much for watching, and see you in next video.